I think, to that point, one of the most misunderstood things about Nvidia is how deep the true Nvidia moat is, right? I think there's a notion out there that, as soon as someone invents a new chip, a better chip, that, they've won. But the truth is, you've been spending the past decade building the full stack from the GPU to the CPU to the networking, and especially the software and libraries that enable applications to run on Nvidia. Well, I appreciate you recognizing how computing has changed. In fact, the reason why people thought, and many still do, that you designed a better chip is that it has more FLOPS, has more flips and flops, and bits and bytes. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, and you see that. You see their keynote slides, it's got all these flips and flops, and bar charts and things like that. And that's all good. I mean, look, horsepower does matter. Yes, so these things fundamentally do matter. However, unfortunately, that's old thinking. It is old thinking in the sense that the software was some application running on Windows and the software was static, which means that the best way for you to improve the system was just making faster and faster chips. But we realized that machine learning is not human programming. Machine learning is not just about the software, it's about the entire data pipeline. In fact, the flywheel of machine learning is the most important thing. So how do you think about enabling this flywheel on the one hand and enabling data scientists and researchers to be productive in this flywheel? And that flywheel starts at the very beginning. A lot of people don't even realize that it takes AI to curate data to teach an AI, and that AI alone is pretty complicated. Yeah, and as that AI itself improves, it also accelerates. Again, when we think about the competitive advantage, right, it's a combination of all these systems. Exactly. And I was exactly going to lead to that. Because of smarter AIs to curate the data, we now even have synthetic data generation and all kinds of different ways of curating data and presenting data. And so, before you even get to training, you've got massive amounts of data processing involved. And so, people think about, oh, PyTorch. That's the beginning and end of the world. And it was very important, but don't forget, before PyTorch, there's an amount of work. After PyTorch, there's an amount of work. And thinking about the flywheel is really the way you ought to think. How do I think about this entire flywheel? And how do I design a computing system, a computing architecture, that helps you take this flywheel and be as effective as possible? It's not one single slice of an application. Training, that's just one step. Every step along that flywheel is hard. And that one click above manufacturing, which is building the chip, right, and designing the chip and architecting the chip in the x86 architecture and building faster and faster x86 chips, that was their brilliance, and they fused that with manufacturing. To me, when I think about a computer, I'm not thinking about that chip, I'm thinking about this thing. That's my mental model, and all the software and all the orchestration, all the machinery that's inside. That's my computer. And we're trying to build a new one every year. Yeah, that's insane. Insane. Nobody has ever done that before. We're trying to build a brand new one every single year, and every single year, we deliver 2 or 3 times more performance as a result. To me, when I think about a computer, I'm not thinking about that chip. I'm thinking about this thing. That's my mental model, and all the software and all the orchestration, all the machinery that's inside. That's my computer, and we're trying to build a new one every year. Yeah, that's insane. Insane. Nobody has ever done that before. We're trying to build a brand new one every single year, and every single year we deliver 2 or 3 times more performance as a result. Every single year we reduce the cost by 2 or 3 times. Joining us now is Bernstein Senior Analyst Stacy Raskin. Stacy, of course, we're going to ask you yet again a question about Nvidia here. But trading at record highs, comments from Jensen Huang, the CEO, over the weekend about the strength of the moat, specifically where inferencing and software are concerned. I'd imagine you've still got a buy on this name, right? You do. I think I've said this before. I think at this point you still have to be there. Demand is off the charts, numbers are going up. I think that's pretty clear. And then you've got Jensen, I think on your channel, talking about insane demand. I mean, they're going to be selling everything that they can make. Yeah, I think you have to be there. I think they'll matter, although I don't anticipate anything on the AI side as being unusual. You know, the other proxies everybody watches for are like when the hyperscalers report, the capex outlooks, and those sorts of things. So just general signs that demand is strong and that customers are continuing to adopt. And again, everything we can see, at least at this point, suggests that that's still a clear runway. It's clearly still happening. Stacy, anything catch your eye about the difference in the trajectories of AMD and Nvidia just over the last few sessions? We just had Lisa Su on last week, after we had Jensen on *overtime* the week before, and really, Nvidia has continued to surge since his insane demand comment. But really, it was kind of a sell the news reaction to AMD's news. So AMD had their event last week, and they announced their next generation part. It's called the MI325. It's basically the MI300 with more memory, which is fine. And they showed some benchmarks on it versus Nvidia's Hopper, their H100 part, their current version. And you know, AMD was sort of suggesting it was superior, and you always have to be a little careful with those self-reported benchmarks, but fine. The issue, though, is that Hopper was introduced, what, a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, and you've got Blackwell, which is Nvidia's next generation part, coming imminently. And I mean, it's going to blow the doors off anything that's out there. And by the time Nvidia, or by the time AMD has something out that you could even argue was even partially competitive with Blackwell, which is the MI350, it's probably the end of next year. By then, we'll all be getting ready for Nvidia's next generation part. Long story short, the gap between when Nvidia is introducing capabilities and when AMD is introducing them is still pretty wide. It's at least a year, maybe longer, and that's just on the chip side. That ignores everything else around software, systems, and ecosystem. Everything else that you need to get broad adoption. And so I think that's why you saw the sell the news reaction with the AMD event. It wasn't like it was a bad event. It was fine, it was good, it's good that they're putting it out. But compared to what they're fighting against, it's tough. Like, it's Nvidia's game to lose at this point, and they're not showing any signs of losing it. Now, at the same time, Nvidia is trading at more than 10 times the market cap of an AMD. So you know, if AMD does pretty well, I wonder when's the last time we saw a moment like this where so many of the chip players are making more of a platform argument up front. You really have to think more about software, you have to think more about these systems. You know, Lisa Su at AMD just made this acquisition, intending to make this acquisition of ZT in that direction. You can't just think about what the performance metrics are on this newest chip, right? And that's absolutely true. It's not like anybody can sort of cherry-pick specific examples where you're better or worse than anybody else, but it really does come down to ecosystem and adoption. And again, given the capabilities that Nvidia has put in place, I mean, you can buy their stuff and be up and running in days. And with a lot of their competitors' stuff, it could be weeks or months to get everything up and running properly. And time is money in this industry. It absolutely matters. And you ask whether other companies have talked about it. I'd say software and ecosystem have been increasingly important pieces of semiconductor sales for a long time. And I mean, everybody sort of looked back in the days with Intel and Microsoft. They formed what was called the Wintel ecosystem, which was pretty dominant in its days for a long time. It's starting to crack now, but these sorts of things, once they get established, can last for a long time. And today, the ecosystem of choice is Nvidia, so everybody else is trying to push into that. You're talking about it like it's a civil war, making me feel like I've got some miles on me. Stacy Raskin, thank you. This version retains the original content and length.